My business partner pushed me out. I became the majority shareholder in secret. The air in our startup's modest office, Nexus Dynamics, was always thick with the smell of ambition, burnt coffee, and the faint, sweet plastic scent of new electronics. For 5 years, it was the perfume of our shared dream. Leo and I, Mark Evans, weren't just partners, we were brothers forged in the fire of late-night coding sessions, fueled by cheap pizza and a shared, unwavering belief that our AI-driven logistics platform would change the game. I was the architect, the dreamer. I saw the algorithms as living things, evolving pathways that could make global supply chains not just efficient, but intelligent, predictive, almost empathetic. Leo was the hustler, the face. He could sell sand in the desert, charm investors with a grin, and talk about market penetration while I talked about neural networks. It worked. It worked brilliantly. We went from a 2-man team in my garage to a 50-person company in sleek downtown offices, with a valuation that made my head spin. That's when the air began to change. It started subtly. Leo began hiring experienced executives from big tech, people who spoke in jargon about monetization streams and aggressive scalability. My meticulous, elegant code was called over-engineered. My focus on building a robust, ethical AI core was labeled perfectionism, holding us back from launch cycles. Our arguments, once passionate debates between equals, became tense boardroom standoffs where I was increasingly outnumbered by his new hires. The climax came on the eve of our Series B funding round. I was in the server room, troubleshooting a latency issue in our core algorithm, a problem one of Leo's new hires had introduced by rushing a half-baked update. Leo found me there, his tie slightly loosened, the gleam in his eyes not one of shared concern, but of cold, premeditated victory. "We need to talk, Mark." Conference room. Now. The "we" was Leo, our new CFO, and a slick, silent lawyer I'd never met. The paperwork laid out on the polished table was not our funding term sheet. "What is this?" I asked, my heart beginning a slow, hard thud against my ribs. "It's a restructuring proposal," Leo said, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. It was a CEO's voice now. "The investors, we feel the company needs a single, clear vision to reach its true, multi-billion-dollar potential. The current co-CEO structure is causing friction. It's muddying the waters." "Our structure has been fine for 5 years," I shot back, anger rising. "The only friction is you trying to turn Nexus into a cash grab app instead of the revolutionary platform we built." The CFO, a woman named Claudia with ice blue eyes, slid a document toward me. "The company's articles of incorporation, Mark. There's a clause, signed by both founders, that allows for the issuance of new shares to secure vital investment. To prevent obstruction." I scanned the legalese, my blood turning to ice. It was a clause I'd barely glanced at in the frantic, hopeful early days. A standard anti-deadlock provision, Leo had said. Now, it was a weapon. They were planning a massive, dilutive round of new shares, offered only to a new investor Leo had lined up. My 50% stake would be crushed to less than 10%. I'd be a minority shareholder with no board seat, no voice. A ghost in my own machine. "You can't do this," I whispered, the betrayal so complete it was physical. "It's already in motion," Leo said, not meeting my eyes. He looked out at the city skyline, our skyline. "You'll be fairly compensated for your original shares. A generous settlement. You can walk away, start something new. But Mark, your vision, this careful, slow build approach, it's holding Nexus back. The world moves fast. We need to move faster. Holding us back." The words echoed in the hollowed-out space where my trust used to be. He was trading our soul for scale, trading me for a quicker path to an IPO. The legal fight was brief and brutal. My lawyer, a fierce woman named Anya, fought hard, But Leo's team had planned this meticulously. The clause was ironclad. The best we could do was negotiate a better buyout, a lump sum of cash for my diluted shares, a pittance compared to the company's true worth, but enough to not be destitute. The non-disparagement and non-compete clauses were draconian, designed to silence me and keep me out of the industry for years. My last day, I cleaned out my desk under the pitiful stares of the engineers who had believed in our dream. Leo was conspicuously absent, in a partner meeting. As the elevator doors closed on the Nexus logo for the last time, I didn't feel sadness. I felt a new, cold, and absolute certainty crystallize within me. This was not an ending. It was the first move in a much longer game. He thought he was a chess master removing a piece. He didn't realize he'd just taught me how to play. The silence in my new apartment was deafening. No server hum, no excited chatter about breakthroughs, just the hollow echo of failure. The settlement money sat in an account, a bitter monument to my naivete. I traveled, not for pleasure, but to disappear. I hiked remote trails, letting the physical exhaustion numb the mental anguish. On a windswept cliff in Iceland, watching the relentless Atlantic pound ashore, the plan formed. Not a plan of revenge, but of reclamation. Of justice. Leo wanted a fast, flashy empire. That kind of growth is brutal. It runs on hype, leverage, and constant, skyrocketing valuation. It creates vulnerabilities. I just needed to find them. Back in the city, I reached out to the only person from my old life I could trust, Anya, my lawyer. Over a discreet dinner in a private booth, I laid out my insane proposition. I want to buy back into Nexus. Without Leo or anyone knowing it's me. Anya swirled her wine, her sharp mind already assessing. Impossible. The non-compete, the shareholder registry, not as a person, I said, leaning forward. As a series of entities. Shell corporations, based in different jurisdictions. An investment fund with a bland name. You handle the legal architecture. I'll handle the analysis. I spent months becoming a ghost in the machine of my own creation. Using publicly available filings, tech gossip sites, and whispers from former colleagues disillusioned with Leo's new blitz-scaling direction, I built a map of Nexus's new weaknesses. Leo had taken on massive debt to fuel aggressive marketing and acquisitions of smaller, flashy startups, acquisitions that integrated poorly with our core platform. The experienced executives had bloated the payroll. The AI core, my beloved, meticulous code, was being patched and band-aided by teams who didn't understand its foundational elegance, leading to public glitches and eroding client trust. Most importantly, I tracked the early investors, the angel investors and venture capitalists from our Series A. Some were getting nervous. The promised hockey stick growth was faltering, user retention was down, costs were up. The sleek facade had cracks, and the smart money could see it. Horizon Capital, a shell company registered in Luxembourg and managed by a discreet firm owned by Anya's contacts, made its first move. It approached a veteran Silicon Valley angel, one who'd made his fortune in the first dot-com boom and had a nose for impending trouble. He was looking to trim his risk. Horizon offered a fair, but not spectacular, price for his Nexus shares. He took it, grateful for the liquidity. Next, Tethys Holdings, based in Singapore, began quietly purchasing Nexus's corporate debt on the secondary market. Leo had issued bonds to fund his shopping spree, and now some of those bond holders were getting anxious as Nexus's credit rating was quietly downgraded. Tethys bought the debt at a discount. For 2 years, I operated from the shadows. I was a ghost, a rumor, a line item on a ledger. I rented a nondescript office under a different name, its walls covered in financial charts and network diagrams tracing the flow of capital in and out of Nexus. My life was data, whispers, and the quiet, patient assembly of power. I watched from afar as Leo, now the undisputed golden boy of tech, gave arrogant interviews, touting Nexus's disruptive velocity. He bought a monstrous glass and steel mansion, dated celebrities, and became a fixture on magazine covers. Every boast, every flashy purchase, was a sign of his detachment from the crumbling engineering reality of the company. The turning point came when a major data breach hit Nexus. It wasn't catastrophic, but it was deeply embarrassing, stemming from a security flaw in one of the rushed acquisitions. The stock, which had been artificially propped up by hype, tanked 40% in a week. Panic set in. This was when my third entity, Odyssey Ventures, emerged. It presented itself as a turnaround-focused fund, speaking the language of stability and long-term value. It reached out to the most panicked of the remaining Series A investors, the board members who were now facing massive paper losses. Odyssey offered a lifeline, a buyout of their shares at a price that was a premium to the crashed market value, but a fraction of what they dreamed of. Desperation is a powerful motivator. They sold. One by one, the pieces of my old company came home. The debt that gave me leverage. The shares that gave me ownership. Through Horizon, Tethys, and Odyssey, I assembled a controlling stake 52.3% of Nexus Dynamics. Leo, in his hubris, had been so focused on the spotlight, on the next big acquisition, on his own celebrity, that he never noticed the quiet, systematic purchase of the ground beneath his feet. The final trigger was the rumor, confirmed by my network, that Leo was in secret talks to sell Nexus to Viper Tech, a massive, soulless conglomerate known for gutting companies for their patents and firing their staff. He was going to cash out, golden parachute and all, and leave the carcass of our dream to be picked apart. My dream. Our dream. It was time for the ghost to become a man again. The emergency board meeting was called by Odyssey Ventures. The agenda was listed simply as corporate control and sale process. Leo, believing Odyssey was an ally interested in approving the Viper Tech deal, walked into the boardroom with his usual swagger. He was flanked by Claudia, the ICCFO, and his yes-man Ku. I entered from the opposite door. The effect was volcanic. Leo's face cycled through confusion, recognition, and dawning, paralyzing horror. His jaw literally went slack. Claudia's pen clattered onto the polished table. "Mark. What the hell are you doing here?" Leo spluttered, recovering with anger. "Security. Security has been informed that Mr. Evans is an invited guest of the majority shareholder," Anya said calmly, taking a seat beside me. She placed a slim folder on the table. "The majority shareholder is right here," Leo snapped, pounding his chest. "Actually," I said, my voice calm after years of silence. It filled the room. "The majority shareholder is a consortium consisting of Horizon Capital, Tethys Holdings, and Odyssey Ventures." I paused, letting the names he'd seen on his own shareholder reports, sink in. I am the beneficial owner and controlling principal of all three entities. The color drained from Leo's face. He looked at Claudia, who was frantically scrolling through a tablet, her face ashen. She gave a tiny, desperate nod. It was true. You scheming, pathetic," he began, but his voice lacked its usual force. It was the sound of a castle built on sand realizing the tide has come in. "The motion on the floor," I continued, as if he hadn't spoken, "is the proposed sale of Nexus Dynamics to Viper Tech. As the majority voting shareholder, I vote no. You can't do this." Leo roared. "This sale is in the best interest of all shareholders. It's a premium offer." "It's a fire sale," I corrected him coolly. "A premium on a price you crashed through negligence, debt, and a fundamental betrayal of this company's core technology. You gutted the soul of Nexus to make it a shiny, hollow sellable asset. The sale is voted down." I opened the folder Anya had provided. Now, to the second item. The performance of the CEO. I began to read, a cold, clinical recitation of his failures, the reckless acquisitions and their integration costs, the bloated payroll, the decline in platform stability and user trust, the catastrophic drop in shareholder value, the ethical shortcuts that led to the data breach. This constitutes gross mismanagement and a breach of fiduciary duty. A motion is put forward for the immediate termination of Leonardo Vance as Chief Executive Officer and his removal from the Board of Directors. All in favor? My hand went up. Anya's hand, as representative of the controlling shares, went up. One by one, the other board members, the ones who had sold to me, the ones who had watched the disaster unfold, raised their hands. It was unanimous. Leo sat there, utterly destroyed. The hustler had been out-hustled. The salesman had been sold a future he didn't own. He was escorted from the building by the same security that once barred me. This time, there were no pitiful stares from the engineers. As the news spread through the office, a strange, electric buzz followed in its wake, not of fear, but of stunned, hopeful disbelief. The next months were a whirlwind. I addressed the entire company, not from a place of gloating, but of painful honesty. I spoke of the original vision, of the elegant code that was still the beating heart of the platform, of my own failure to protect it, and of our shared mission to rebuild it, properly. I dismantled Leo's bloated executive tier, promoted engineers who had kept the faith, and personally led the project to strip out the faulty acquisitions and restore integrity to our AI core. We focused on our loyal early clients, fixed the bugs, and slowly, painstakingly, began to regain trust. The company, freed from the weight of debt and mismanagement, began to breathe again. To innovate. To thrive. Leo's fall was as public as his rise. The Vipertech deal collapsing was a scandal. Investigations into his financial mismanagement during his tenure followed. He was forced to sell the glass mansion, the sports cars. The tech magazines that once worshipped him now ran exposes titled The Hubris of Hustle Culture. He was unemployable, a pariah, his reputation ash. I saw him once more, by chance, in a coffee shop near our old startup digs. He looked older, diminished, wearing an off-the-rack sweater. Our eyes met across the room. There was no anger left in his, just a hollow, weary shame. He looked away first, and left without his coffee. There was no victory in that moment. Only the quiet certainty of a balance restored. He had pushed me out, thinking the vision was dead. But a true vision isn't a commodity, it's a seed. It can lie dormant in the darkness, waiting for the right conditions to grow. I had nurtured it in secret, through patience and precision, and now it was blooming again, stronger than ever. Nexus Dynamics was finally mine, not through a sneaky clause, but through the relentless, undeniable logic of building something that was meant to last. The ghost was gone. The architect was back at the helm.